The mother-in-law humiliated the poor bride at the wedding. Then she discovered she was a billionaire's daughter. The wedding venue sat on the edge of Lake Michigan in Chicago, decorated with white roses, crystal lights, and elegant gold accents. Guests arrived in expensive suits and designer dresses. Luxury cars lined the entrance, and waiters moved through the crowd carrying trays of sparkling drinks. Everything looked perfect. At least that was what everyone believed. Inside one of the dressing rooms, 26-year-old Emily Carter stood quietly in front of a mirror. Her wedding dress was beautiful but simple. It wasn't custom-made. It wasn't covered in expensive jewels. It was something she had chosen because she liked it, not because it impressed people. She adjusted the veil and stared at her reflection. In a few hours, she would marry the man she loved. Daniel Thompson. Daniel came from one of Chicago's most respected families. His father owned several successful construction companies. His mother, Patricia Thompson, was known in social circles across the city. She hosted charity galas, attended exclusive events, and cared deeply about status. Patricia had never approved of Emily. Not once. To Patricia, Emily was a nobody. Emily worked as a nurse at a community hospital. She drove an old car. She lived in a modest apartment. She wore simple clothes. Patricia had spent the last 2 years trying to convince Daniel that Emily wasn't good enough for him. But Daniel refused to listen. He loved Emily because she was kind, honest, and genuine. Things his mother rarely valued. A soft knock came on the door. Emily turned. Her best friend Sarah entered with a smile. "You look beautiful." Emily laughed nervously. "I feel like I'm about to pass out." Sarah hugged her. "That's normal." Emily smiled. "I just want everything to go smoothly." Sarah hesitated. Emily immediately noticed. "What is it?" Sarah sighed. "Your future mother-in-law is already causing problems." Emily closed her eyes. "Of course she is." Emily. "It's okay. Tell me." Sarah sat beside her. "I overheard Patricia talking to some guests." Emily looked down. "What did she say?" Sarah looked uncomfortable. "She said Daniel could have married someone from a wealthy family. Someone who could help expand the family's influence." Emily forced a smile. Nothing new. She also said she still doesn't understand why her son chose a nurse. Emily swallowed hard. Sarah reached for her hand. "You don't deserve this." Emily nodded. But deep inside, the words still hurt. For 2 years she had tried. She had been respectful, patient, polite, no matter how cruel Patricia became. Yet nothing changed. Patricia always looked at her as though she wasn't worthy of standing beside Daniel. The worst part was that Patricia believed Emily was poor. Emily had never corrected her. Not because she enjoyed being insulted. Because revealing the truth would create complications she had spent years trying to avoid. Very few people knew who she really was. Even Daniel didn't know everything. Emily's phone buzzed. A message appeared. "Good luck today. We love you. Dad." Emily stared at the message for several seconds. Her eyes softened. She typed back, "Thank you. I'll call later." She put the phone away. Sarah noticed. "Your father." Emily nodded. "He wishes he could be here." Sarah knew only part of the story. The part Emily allowed people to know. That her father traveled frequently for business. Nothing more. The ceremony was scheduled to begin in 30 minutes. Outside, guests continued arriving. Patricia stood near the entrance greeting people. She wore an expensive designer gown and enough jewelry to attract attention from every corner of the room. A group of women surrounded her. One of them smiled. "Patricia, are you excited?" Patricia forced a laugh. "Of course." Emily seemed sweet. Patricia's smile weakened. "She's nice enough." The women exchanged glances. Everyone knew Patricia's opinion. One woman leaned closer. "I heard she comes from a very ordinary family." Patricia didn't hide her disappointment. "That's putting it kindly." Several women chuckled. Patricia continued. "My son had opportunities to marry women from extraordinary families." "Then why didn't he?" Patricia sighed dramatically. "Love." The way she said it made the words sound like a problem. The women laughed again. Patricia noticed a few guests approaching. Among them was Emily's aunt, Linda. Patricia immediately straightened. Linda wasn't wealthy. She worked as a schoolteacher. Patricia barely tolerated her presence. "Good morning," Linda said warmly. Patricia responded with a thin smile. "Good morning." Linda noticed the coldness but ignored it. Today wasn't about her. Today was about Emily. Unfortunately, Patricia had other plans. As guests moved toward the ceremony area, Patricia made her way to the bridal suite. Without knocking, she entered. Emily turned. The room immediately became tense. Sarah stepped back. Patricia looked Emily up and down. The silence lasted several seconds. Finally she spoke. "I suppose the dress looks acceptable." Emily remained calm. "Thank you." Patricia crossed her arms. "I've been meaning to talk to you." Emily already knew this wouldn't be pleasant. "What about?" Patricia walked closer. "Marriage into our family comes with expectations." Sarah rolled her eyes. Patricia ignored her. Emily answered politely. "I understand." "No, I don't think you do." Patricia lowered her voice. "Our family has a reputation." Emily stayed silent. Patricia continued. "People will judge you." "I know. They'll notice your background." Emily's chest tightened. Patricia wasn't finished. "They'll notice where you come from." Sarah finally spoke. "That's enough." Patricia shot her a look. "I wasn't speaking to you." Emily gently touched Sarah's arm. "It's okay." Patricia smirked. "You've convinced my son you're perfect. Congratulations." Emily looked directly at her. "I love Daniel." Patricia laughed. "Love doesn't pay for country club memberships." Sarah looked ready to explode. Emily felt her face burn with embarrassment. Patricia leaned closer. "Remember something." "What?" "You may be marrying into this family, but you'll never truly belong." The room fell silent. Patricia turned and walked out. The door slammed behind her. Sarah immediately stood. "I cannot believe her." Emily stared at the floor. For the first time that day, tears filled her eyes. Sarah hugged her tightly. "You don't need her approval." Emily nodded. But the pain remained. Not because Patricia disliked her. Because no matter how hard she tried, Patricia never even gave her a chance. Half an hour later, the ceremony began. Guests filled every seat. The lake shimmered behind the floral arch. Music played softly. Daniel stood at the altar waiting. The moment he saw Emily walking toward him, his eyes filled with emotion. Nothing else mattered. Not the guests. Not the decorations. Not his mother's opinions. Only Emily. She reached him. He squeezed her hands. "You look beautiful." Emily smiled. "So do you." The ceremony proceeded perfectly. The vows were sincere. Their emotions were real. Many guests wiped away tears. When Daniel kissed Emily, applause erupted across the venue. For a brief moment, everything felt perfect. They were husband and wife. The reception began shortly afterward. Guests ate, danced, and celebrated. Emily finally started relaxing. Then disaster struck. Patricia stood and tapped a glass. The room grew quiet. Daniel frowned immediately. His mother wasn't scheduled to speak. Patricia smiled at the crowd. "I'd like to say a few words." Emily felt uneasy. Daniel whispered, "Mom, keep it short." Patricia ignored him. She faced the audience. "Today my son married the woman he loves." Polite applause followed. Patricia continued. "While this wasn't exactly the match many expected." The room became noticeably quieter. Daniel's jaw tightened. Patricia smiled. "But life surprises us." Emily felt her stomach drop. Several guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Patricia raised her glass. Not everyone is fortunate enough to come from privilege. The room froze. Daniel stood. "Mom." She ignored him. Some people begin life with advantages. Emily's face turned pale. Others begin with nothing. The humiliation had begun. And everyone could see it. Patricia's words hung in the air like a dark cloud. Their entire reception hall became uncomfortably quiet. Emily sat frozen beside Daniel. She could feel hundreds of eyes moving between her and Patricia. Daniel immediately stood. "Mom, that's enough." Patricia smiled as though she had done nothing wrong. "I'm only giving a toast." "No," Daniel said firmly. "You're embarrassing my wife." A murmur spread through the crowd. Patricia raised her hands innocently. "Why is everyone so sensitive?" Emily felt her cheeks burning. She had spent years enduring Patricia's insults in private. But this was different. This was her wedding day. The one day she had hoped would be free from judgment. Patricia took another sip from her glass. "I simply wanted to acknowledge that Emily comes from a very humble background." The room remained silent. No one knew where to look. Daniel walked toward the microphone. But Patricia stepped slightly away. "Let me finish." "Mom." "Just one more minute." Daniel looked furious. Emily gently touched his arm. "Please." He looked at her. She forced a small smile. The last thing she wanted was a public argument. Patricia continued speaking. "My family has spent generations building a legacy." Several guests shifted uncomfortably. Patricia glanced directly at Emily. Sometimes people enter a family without understanding what it took to build that success. The insult was unmistakable. Emily lowered her eyes. Sarah sat nearby, gripping her chair so tightly her knuckles turned white. Linda looked equally angry. But Emily remained silent. Patricia finished her speech with a smile. Still, Daniel made his choice. The words hit harder than she probably intended. As if her son had settled. As if marrying Emily were some unfortunate compromise. Patricia lifted her glass. "So let's celebrate." A few scattered claps followed. Most guests looked embarrassed. Daniel immediately took the microphone. His voice was calm but firm. "I'd also like to say something." Patricia stepped aside. Daniel faced the crowd. "My wife is the kindest person I've ever met." The room became quiet again. "She works harder than anyone I know." Emily looked up. Daniel continued. "She spent years helping people in one of the busiest hospitals in Chicago." Guests listened carefully. "She's stronger than I am." Emily felt tears forming. And if anyone thinks she's less valuable because of where she comes from, they don't know her at all. Several guests applauded. This time the applause was genuine. Daniel looked directly at his mother. "I couldn't be prouder to call her my wife." The applause grew louder. Patricia's smile disappeared. Emily squeezed Daniel's hand beneath the table. For the next hour, the reception slowly recovered. Music resumed. People danced. Conversations restarted. But the damage had been done. Many guests kept approaching Emily, offering sympathy, compliments, support. Everyone had witnessed what happened. Even people who barely knew Emily could see Patricia had crossed a line. Later that evening, Emily stepped outside onto a terrace overlooking the lake. The cool air felt refreshing. She needed a moment alone. The tears she had been holding back finally appeared. She wasn't crying because Patricia thought she was poor. She had never cared about that. She was crying because no bride should experience humiliation on her wedding day. A voice interrupted her thoughts. "You okay?" "Daniel." Emily quickly wiped her eyes. He sat beside her. "You don't have to pretend with me." She looked away. "I just wanted today to be happy." "It still can be." Emily sighed. "I tried so hard with your mother." "I know. Nothing is ever enough." Daniel took her hand. "Her behavior is her responsibility." Emily nodded. He hesitated before speaking again. "There's something I've wondered for a long time." Emily looked at him. "What?" "Why do you never talk about your family?" Emily's expression changed slightly. Daniel noticed immediately. "You don't have to answer." "No." She looked toward the water. "I just haven't been ready." Daniel waited patiently. Emily rarely discussed her father, or her childhood, or where she grew up. There were always vague answers. Never lies. But never the complete truth. Daniel had respected that. Tonight, however, he sensed there was more. A lot more. Emily leaned against him. "One day I'll explain everything." Daniel kissed her forehead. Whenever you're ready. Back inside the reception hall, Patricia sat with several friends. She looked annoyed. Not guilty. Not ashamed. Annoyed. One woman shook her head. Patricia, that speech wasn't necessary. Patricia scoffed. I spoke the truth. You embarrassed your son. Patricia crossed her arms. Someone had to. Another guest joined the conversation. You may not like Emily, but she's been respectful. Patricia remained stubborn. Respectful isn't the same as suitable. The women exchanged glances. It was impossible to reason with her. Patricia had convinced herself she was protecting her family. The reality was much simpler. She was obsessed with status. 3 days later, Daniel and Emily returned from a short honeymoon. Life began settling into a routine. Emily returned to work. Daniel resumed managing projects for his father's company. For a while, Patricia stayed quiet. Then came another family gathering. Daniel's father, Richard Thompson, was celebrating his 65th birthday. The event was held at the family's large estate outside Chicago. Emily didn't want to attend. But Daniel convinced her. It'll be fine. Emily smiled weakly. I've heard that before. Daniel laughed. Fair point. The party was elegant. Business executives, family friends, and relatives filled the house. Emily greeted everyone politely. Many guests genuinely liked her. Unfortunately, Patricia remained determined to make her uncomfortable. At one point, Emily found herself standing near a group of women discussing travel. One woman smiled. Emily, have you ever been to Monaco? Emily shook her head. No. What about Switzerland? No. Patricia suddenly appeared. I'm sure hospital salaries don't leave much room for luxury vacations. The conversation immediately died. Emily stared at her. Patricia smiled. The fake kind. The cruel kind. The women looked horrified. One quietly walked away. Another pretended to check her phone. Patricia seemed completely unaware of how awful she sounded. Or perhaps she simply didn't care. Later that evening, Emily stepped into the kitchen to help carry desserts. One of the house staff smiled warmly. Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. Emily smiled back. No problem. She enjoyed helping. Always had. Patricia entered moments later. The sight clearly irritated her. Emily. Yes. Guests don't work in the kitchen. Emily blinked. I was helping. Patricia lowered her voice. The staff can handle it. Emily set down the tray. Patricia looked satisfied. As Emily walked away, she heard Patricia mutter something. Old habits die hard. Emily stopped. The words hurt more than they should have. Because Patricia genuinely believed she was beneath everyone else. That night, Emily finally reached her limit. When she and Daniel returned home, she sat quietly on the couch. Daniel immediately sensed something was wrong. What happened? Emily hesitated. Then everything came out. Every insult. Every comment. Every humiliation. Every moment she had swallowed her pride to keep peace. Daniel listened silently. The more she spoke, the angrier he became. When she finished, he stood. I'm calling her. Emily grabbed his hand. No. Emily. No. He sat back down. She looked exhausted. Emotionally exhausted. I don't want to spend my life fighting your mother. Daniel wrapped his arms around her. You shouldn't have to. For a long moment neither spoke. Then Emily whispered something. Something she had never said before. I'm tired of hiding who I am. Daniel looked at her. What do you mean? Emily stared at the floor. The secret she had protected for years suddenly felt heavier than ever. The time was coming. Soon, everyone would know. Including Patricia. And when that happened, nothing would ever be the same again. Far across the country in New York City, a black luxury vehicle pulled up outside a towering glass skyscraper. The building bore a name recognized around the world. Carter Global Holdings. One of the largest investment groups in America. Inside the top floor office sat a silver-haired billionaire studying reports. His assistant entered. Sir. The man looked up. Yes. Your daughter's wedding photos arrived. A rare smile appeared on his face. He reached for the envelope. Inside were photographs of Emily. Happy, beautiful, married. His smile faded slightly as he noticed something else. An article clipped from a society magazine. A guest had recorded part of Patricia's speech. The headline read, "Chicago socialite humiliates son's bride during wedding reception." The billionaire's expression changed instantly. His eyes hardened. Who is Patricia Thompson? The assistant swallowed. I'll find out immediately. The billionaire nodded slowly. For years he had respected Emily's wish to live independently, to build her own life, to avoid being known only as a billionaire's daughter. But one thing he would never tolerate was someone humiliating his child, especially publicly, especially on her wedding day. And for the first time in years, he was preparing to step into her world. The moment Patricia Thompson discovered who Emily really was getting closer. And the truth was far bigger than she could ever imagine. The following week began like any other. Emily returned to work at the hospital. Daniel focused on several construction projects. For a few days, life felt normal. Then everything changed. On Tuesday morning, Daniel received a call from his father. "Can you come to the office this afternoon?" Richard asked. "Sure. What's going on?" Richard sounded confused. "I'm not entirely sure." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" "We've been contacted by representatives from Carter Global Holdings." Daniel nearly dropped his phone. Carter Global Holdings. Yes. Even Daniel knew the name. Everyone did. Carter Global Holdings was one of the most powerful investment firms in the United States. The company had interests in real estate, technology, healthcare, transportation, and dozens of other industries. Richard sounded nervous. They requested a meeting. Daniel was stunned. With us. Specifically with the Thompson family. After the call ended, Daniel sat in silence. Something felt strange. Very strange. That same afternoon, Richard, Patricia, and Daniel arrived at their corporate headquarters conference room. Patricia was excited. This could be huge. Richard nodded. If they're interested in investing, it would change everything. Patricia smiled. Exactly. A few minutes later, the conference room doors opened. 3 executives entered first. Then another man walked in behind them. The moment he entered, the room became silent. Everyone recognized him instantly. William Carter, founder and chairman of Carter Global Holdings. One of the wealthiest men in America. Patricia's eyes widened. Richard immediately stood. "Mr. Carter." William shook his hand politely. "Thank you for meeting with me." The group sat down. Patricia could barely contain her excitement. She had spent years trying to gain access to circles occupied by people like William Carter. Now he was sitting across from her. William remained calm, professional, direct. After a few moments, he spoke. "I understand your son recently got married." Patricia smiled proudly. "Yes." William nodded. "To Emily Carter." The room became quiet. Patricia laughed lightly. "Yes." William studied her face. "How do you feel about Emily?" The question seemed odd. Patricia forced a smile. "She's adjusting to our family." Daniel immediately felt uncomfortable. William noticed. "So you approve of her?" Patricia hesitated. Richard shifted in his seat. Daniel remained silent. William already knew the answer. He had watched the wedding video, read every article, spoken to people who attended. He knew exactly how Patricia treated his daughter. Finally, Patricia answered. "She comes from a very different background." William nodded slowly. "I see." His expression remained unreadable. The room felt increasingly tense. Then William reached into a folder. He removed several documents and placed them on the table. "I'd like to clarify something." Patricia looked confused. William slid one document toward her. It was a family photograph. Patricia stared. The color drained from her face. The picture showed William Carter standing beside a younger Emily, his arm around her shoulders, both smiling. Patricia blinked, then blinked again. Her hands began trembling. "What is this?" William's voice remained calm. "My daughter." The room froze. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Patricia stared at the photograph, then at William, then back at the photograph. Her mouth opened. No words came out. Daniel looked completely stunned. Richard looked equally shocked. Finally, Daniel whispered, "Emily." William nodded. "Yes." Silence. Patricia looked like she had stopped breathing. "No." William met her eyes. "Yes." Patricia shook her head repeatedly. "That's impossible." "It isn't." William slid another document across the table. A magazine cover. Emily standing beside him at a charity event years earlier. Another photograph followed. Then another. Then another. There was no denying it. The woman Patricia had mocked, humiliated, looked down upon, was the daughter of a billionaire. Not just any billionaire. One of the richest and most influential men in America. Patricia felt sick. Her mind replayed every insult, every cruel comment, every humiliation, every moment she had treated Emily like she wasn't good enough. And suddenly those memories became unbearable. Daniel finally found his voice. "Emily never told me." William smiled slightly. "She never wanted to be judged because of my money." Daniel sat back in disbelief. Everything suddenly made sense. Her reluctance to discuss her family, her privacy, her independence, her refusal to use wealth to impress anyone. William looked directly at Patricia. "My daughter asked for a normal life." Patricia couldn't even meet his eyes. She wanted people to know her for who she was. The silence grew heavier. William continued. "Instead, some people chose to judge her based on assumptions." Patricia felt her face burning. She knew exactly who he meant. William stood. "So now you know the truth." Without another word, he left the conference room. The executives followed him. The door closed. Patricia remained frozen. For the first time in years, she had no defense. No explanation. No excuse. Only shame. That evening, Daniel rushed home. Emily was reading on the couch when he entered. He looked stunned. She immediately knew. "You met my father." Daniel sat beside her. "You knew this whole time?" Emily nodded softly. "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" Emily took his hand. "Because I needed to know you loved me." Daniel laughed. A shocked laugh. "Emily, I would have loved you either way." She smiled. "I know." Daniel shook his head. "My mother nearly fainted." For the first time in days, Emily laughed. A real laugh. The next morning Patricia called. Emily stared at the phone for a long time. Finally she answered. "Hello." Patricia's voice sounded different. Smaller. Broken. "Emily, may I see you?" Several hours later they met at a quiet cafe. Patricia arrived first. When Emily entered, Patricia immediately stood. Her eyes were red. She looked like she hadn't slept. Emily sat down. For a moment neither spoke. Then Patricia began crying. Not elegant tears. Not controlled tears. Real tears. "I am so sorry." Emily remained silent. Patricia shook her head. "No." Her voice cracked. "You don't understand." Tears continued falling. "I have never been more ashamed of myself." Emily watched quietly. Patricia continued. "I judged you before I knew you." She wiped her eyes. "I treated you terribly." Another tear rolled down her cheek. "I ruined moments you can never get back." Emily looked down. The wedding. The insults. The embarrassment. The pain. Patricia was right. Some things couldn't be undone. "I thought I was protecting my family." Patricia laughed bitterly. "The truth is I was protecting my ego." Emily said nothing. Patricia lowered her head. "And the worst part is this." She looked up. "I would have treated you differently if I'd known who your father was." Emily's eyes softened slightly. Because Patricia was finally being honest. Painfully honest. Patricia nodded. "That realization disgusts me." Silence filled the table. Then Patricia whispered. "You deserved kindness from the beginning." Emily felt emotions she hadn't expected. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Sadness. Because Patricia finally understood. After all the damage. After all the hurt. She finally understood. Patricia reached into her purse. She removed a small envelope. "What is that?" Emily asked. "A letter." Emily took it. Patricia wiped her tears. "I wrote everything I couldn't say properly." Emily opened it later that evening. Inside was a handwritten apology spanning several pages. No excuses. No justifications. Only accountability. Patricia admitted every mistake, every assumption, every failure. And for the first time, Emily believed the apology was genuine. Weeks passed. Then months. Patricia changed. Not overnight. Not perfectly. But genuinely. She began treating Emily with respect. Then kindness. Then affection. The relationship slowly healed. Trust returned little by little. One afternoon, nearly a year later, Emily and Patricia sat together preparing decorations for a family gathering. Patricia smiled. "You know something." "What?" "I spent years thinking wealth determined a person's value." Emily looked at her. Patricia shook her head. "And then I met the richest woman I've ever known." Emily laughed. "I'm not richer than my father." Patricia smiled. "That's not what I meant." Emily understood. For the first time, Patricia wasn't talking about money. She was talking about character. The thing she had ignored from the very beginning. A few months later, Emily and Daniel welcomed their first child. A baby girl. Their entire family gathered at the hospital. William Carter flew in immediately. Richard couldn't stop smiling. And Patricia stood beside Emily's hospital bed holding her granddaughter. Tears filled her eyes again. This time for a different reason. She looked at Emily. "Thank you." Emily smiled. "For what?" Patricia carefully held the baby. "For giving me a second chance." Emily looked at the woman who had once humiliated her. The woman who had judged her, rejected her, embarrassed her, and then worked hard to become better. People make mistakes. Some never change. Some refuse to learn. But some face the truth, accept responsibility, and become different people. Patricia had finally become one of those people. Emily gently touched her daughter's tiny hand. The room was filled with family, love, peace, and a future free from the mistakes of the past. The mother-in-law who once believed status mattered more than character had learned the hardest lesson of her life. The poor bride she humiliated had never been poor at all. But in the end, that wasn't what mattered. What mattered was that Emily had always been rich in the things that truly counted. Kindness, dignity, patience, integrity, and love. Those were the qualities that made Daniel choose her. Those were the qualities that earned William Carter's pride. And those were the qualities that eventually changed Patricia Thompson's heart. The wedding humiliation became a painful memory, but it was no longer the end of the story. It became the beginning of a family's transformation. And for the first time, they all moved forward together.